Unexpected inheritances. The serpent's caduceus. Have you ever wondered if a massive inheritance could be the key to unlocking a terrifying truth, or a deadly trap? Join us as we explore the story of a tech billionaire caught in a mysterious legacy, revealing heinous research and an uncompromising fight for justice, where past and present intertwine in a tapestry woven from deceit and greed. Prepare to be captivated by a tale where unexpected wealth leads to a perilous quest for truth. If you're ready to dive into a world of corporate secrets and personal redemption, like this story, subscribe for more thrilling narratives, and share it with friends who love a good mystery. Alaric Vance's penthouse, perched atop the gleaming spire of the Ethelberg Spire in Midtown Manhattan, was a testament to his relentless ascent. From its floor-to-ceiling windows, the city unfurled like a glittering tapestry, a million electric veins pulsing with ambition and desire. At 48, Alaric was the undisputed titan behind Lumina Dynamics, a tech conglomerate whose innovations in AI and quantum computing had reshaped industries and amassed him a fortune estimated at over $12 billion. Yet, amidst the bespoke Italian furniture, the priceless abstract art, and the panoramic views that stretched from the Hudson to the East River, Alaric often felt an unsettling emptiness, a hollow echo in the vast, silent expanse of his success. His mornings began with a ritualistic precision that bordered on asceticism. A triple espresso, black, brewed from rare Ethiopian beans, its rich aroma filling the sterile air. A scan of global markets on a custom-built holographic display, data streams dancing before his eyes, each fluctuation a potential conquest. A quick, brutal workout in his private gym, the rhythmic thud of his trainers against the shock-absorbent floor the only sound breaking the dawn's quiet. He moved with the lean, coiled energy of a predator, every action efficient, every thought geared towards the next strategic conquest. But beneath the polished veneer of the tech mogul, a different man resided, one forged in the crucible of a forgotten past, a past he had painstakingly buried beneath layers of wealth and achievement, like a dark secret beneath polished marble. Alaric had not been born into the gilded cage he now inhabited. His origins were rooted in the desolate landscape of Ashfall, Ohio, a town that had once thrived on the steel industry, now a skeletal monument to economic decay. The air that had always carried the metallic tang of rust and despair, a constant reminder of dwindling prospects. His childhood home, a dilapidated two-story house on Willow Lane, perpetually smelled of mildew and stale cigarette smoke, a scent that still, even now, could trigger a phantom ache in his chest. His father, a man broken by layoffs and the slow death of his industry, had retreated into the numbing embrace of cheap whiskey, his once strong hands now trembling, his voice a slurred lament. His mother, a resilient but weary woman, worked double shifts at the local diner, Granny's Griddle, her hands raw from scrubbing dishes, her spirit slowly eroding under the relentless grind of poverty. Alaric remembered the gnawing hunger, not just for food, but for escape. He remembered the humiliation of worn-out shoes with holes patched with cardboard, the shame of free school lunches, the constant, suffocating pressure of knowing that every penny counted, and there were never enough. He remembered the dull ache of cold in winter, the leaky roof, the constant hum of worry that permeated their small home. His younger brother, Caelan, frail and often sickly, had been his only confidant, his only anchor in a turbulent sea. Caelan, with his quiet intelligence and an insatiable curiosity about the natural world, his nose always buried in a borrowed library book about biology or astronomy, had been Alaric's stark opposite. While Alaric dreamed of conquering the world, of bending it to his will, Caelan dreamed of understanding it, of healing its broken parts, of finding beauty in the smallest organisms. The turning point came when Alaric was 16. A local coding competition, sponsored by a regional university, Midwest Tech Institute, offered a full scholarship. Alaric, driven by a desperate, almost primal need to break free from Ashfall's suffocating grip, poured every waking hour into learning lines of code from dusty library books and a borrowed, ancient PC from the town's defunct community center. He taught himself assembly language, C++, and even rudimentary AI algorithms, fueled by stale coffee and an unyielding resolve. He won. The scholarship was his ticket out of Ashfall, a golden key to unlock a future he had only dared to dream of. He left without a backward glance, a burning ambition his only companion, the dust of Ashfall clinging to his worn shoes. He promised Caelan he'd come back for him, a whispered vow in the shadow of a Greyhound bus, but the promise, like the bus's exhaust, faded with each mile, becoming a distant, painful echo. College was a blur of caffeine-fueled nights and relentless study, a relentless pursuit of knowledge and opportunity. He interned at nascent tech startups, absorbing every scrap of knowledge, every strategic maneuver, every nuance of the burgeoning digital landscape. He saw opportunities where others saw chaos, predicting market shifts with uncanny accuracy. He founded Lumina Dynamics in a cramped garage in Silicon Valley, fueled by ramen noodles and an unwavering belief in his vision, a vision of technological dominance. The company's rise was meteoric, a testament to Alaric's ruthless efficiency and his uncanny ability to predict the next technological wave. He built an empire, piece by agonizing piece, crushing competitors, acquiring smaller firms, expanding into new markets. But in doing so, he shed more than just his humble origins. He shed connections, empathy, and the vestiges of the boy who had once promised his brother the world. He became a machine, efficient and powerful, but increasingly isolated. He rarely visited Ashfall. The few times he did, the decay seemed deeper, the faces older, the despair more entrenched, like a chronic illness that had consumed the town. His parents had passed away years ago, their lives ending much as they had begun, in quiet struggle, their dreams long since withered. Caelan, he knew, had become a medical researcher, a path Alaric had vaguely encouraged but never truly understood, seeing it as less impactful than his own grand ambitions. Their conversations were terse, strained, punctuated by long silences, each word a painful reminder of the growing distance between them. Alaric's wealth had created an unbridgeable chasm, a canyon carved by success and neglect. He had bought himself freedom, but at what cost? He had escaped poverty, only to find himself trapped in a different kind of solitude, a gilded cage of his own making, where the only company was the hum of his own ambition. One crisp Tuesday morning, as Alaric reviewed the quarterly projections for Lumina Dynamics on his holographic display, a notification flashed. Not from his usual legal team at Obsidian and Quill Legal, but from an unfamiliar, antiquated-looking email address. The subject line read, "Regarding the estate of Isolde Blackwood." Alaric frowned. Isolde Blackwood. The name stirred a faint, almost forgotten memory. A great-aunt, his mother's distant cousin, whom he'd met once, perhaps twice, during a childhood summer visit to some forgotten New England town, a place shrouded in mist and old money. A stern, reclusive woman with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through you, and a faint scent of lavender and old books, like a forgotten library. He dismissed it as a clerical error, perhaps a distant relative's estate being settled, a minor inconvenience. He forwarded it to Seraphina Croft, his chief of staff, with a curt instruction, "Handle this. Likely spam. Don't waste my time." Seraphina, a woman of formidable intellect and unwavering loyalty, usually handled such matters with quiet efficiency, her movements as precise as a well-oiled machine. But an hour later, her voice, usually calm and measured, held a note of genuine surprise, almost bewilderment, when she called. "Alaric," she began, her tone hushed, "this isn't spam. It's legitimate. A law firm, Evergreen and Thorne, based in Blackwood Creek, Massachusetts. They're requesting your presence for the reading of a will. Isolde Blackwood's will." "My presence?" Alaric scoffed, a dismissive wave of his hand. "For a great-aunt I haven't seen in 30 years. What could she possibly have left me? A porcelain doll? A collection of antique thimbles?" He imagined some dusty, forgotten heirloom, a sentimental trinket of no value. His time was measured in millions, not trinkets. Every second was a commodity. "They're insistent," Seraphina continued, her tone growing more serious, a hint of urgency in her voice. "And, the initial communication suggests the inheritance is substantial. Very substantial. They used the word unprecedented." Alaric paused, his hand hovering over the holographic projection of Lumina Dynamics stock performance, the green lines of growth momentarily forgotten. Substantial. Isolde Blackwood, as he recalled, was a spinster, living in a decaying old house, a woman of modest means. Where would she get substantial wealth? A flicker of curiosity, a rare emotion in his meticulously ordered world, ignited within him, like a forgotten ember catching fire. It was a novel sensation, a deviation from his calculated path. "All right, Serafina," he said, a new edge to his voice, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Book the jet. We're going to Blackwood Creek. This I have to see for myself." A few days before the scheduled will reading, a package arrived at the Ethelberg Spire penthouse, bypassing all of Alaric's usual security protocols. It was a plain, unmarked wooden box, old and slightly warped, tied with a faded velvet ribbon. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried lavender, was a single, tarnished silver locket and a handwritten letter on brittle, yellowed parchment. The scent of lavender, faint but distinct, filled the air, stirring a distant, almost forgotten memory of Isolde. The letter, written in Isolde's elegant, spidery hand, was not addressed to Alaric. It was a fragment of a diary entry, dated nearly 50 years ago. The whispers grow louder. "They say it's a miracle, but I see the shadows. The children. Their eyes hold no light. I must find the truth before it consumes them all. Before it consumes Ilara." Alaric's brow furrowed. Ilara? The name meant nothing to him. He opened the locket. Inside, a faded miniature photograph of a young woman with a kind, haunted face, and on the other side, a tiny, intricately carved silver key, no bigger than his thumbnail. The key was unlike any he had ever seen, its teeth a complex, unique pattern. A chill, unrelated to the air conditioning, ran down his spine. This was no ordinary inheritance. This was a prelude, a cryptic invitation to a game he didn't know he was playing. The metallic tang he'd vaguely associated with Isolde now seemed to sharpen, a premonition of something industrial and unsettling. What hidden depths lie beneath the surface of this unexpected inheritance? And what dark secrets is Isolde Blackwood compelling Alaric to uncover? If you're captivated by Alaric's journey and the mysteries unfolding, please like this story, subscribe for more thrilling narratives, and share it with friends who love a good mystery. Blackwood Creek, Massachusetts, was a stark contrast to the relentless pulse of Manhattan. Nestled amidst rolling hills and ancient oak trees, their branches gnarled and wise, it was a town steeped in old money and forgotten histories, a place where whispers carried more weight than shouts. Cobblestone streets, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, wound past meticulously preserved colonial homes, their windows reflecting the soft, gray light of an overcast autumn day, like watchful eyes. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth, burning leaves, and a faint, sweet aroma of apples. It was the kind of place where time seemed to move slower, where legacies were whispered rather than flaunted, and secrets were buried deep beneath generations of polite society. Alaric Vance, clad in a charcoal gray suit from Savile Row that cost more than most Blackwood Creek homes, felt like an alien in this quaint, hushed world. His private jet, a sleek Gulfstream G650, had landed at a small regional airport, Fenwick Airfield, and a discreet black sedan, a Maybach S-Class, had whisked him and Serafina through the winding country roads, past stone walls and sprawling, dormant fields. He felt an odd sense of displacement, as if he had stepped into a sepia-toned photograph. Ravenscroft Estate, Isolde Blackwood's residence, stood on a secluded rise overlooking a dormant vineyard, its rows of skeletal vines stretching towards the horizon. It was not the grand, imposing estate Alaric had vaguely imagined, but rather a sprawling Victorian house, its once proud facade now faded, its intricate gingerbread trim peeling like sunburnt skin. The paint, a muted sage green, was chipped and stained. Ivy clung to the walls like a suffocating embrace, its tendrils snaking into every crevice, and the garden, once meticulously manicured, had surrendered to a wild tangle of overgrown roses, thorny bushes, and forgotten statuary, hinting at a past grandeur. The air around it felt heavy, laden with secrets, a palpable sense of history and sorrow. "It looks like something out of a Gothic novel," Serafina murmured, adjusting her glasses, her usual composure slightly ruffled. "Or a haunted house movie." "More like a cautionary tale," Alaric retorted, a grim smile playing on his lips, though a flicker of unease stirred within him. He wondered what kind of life Isolde had led within these decaying walls, what secrets she had harbored. A life so different from his own, yet now, inexplicably, intertwined with his. The irony was not lost on him. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of shadowed rooms, each filled with the ghosts of a bygone era. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the heavy velvet drapes, illuminating the intricate patterns on the faded wallpaper. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper, dried flowers, and something else. A faint, metallic tang that Alaric couldn't quite place, a scent that hinted at something industrial, something out of place in this genteel setting. Antiques, covered in white sheets, stood like silent sentinels, their forms hinting at forgotten elegance. Bookshelves groaned under the weight of countless volumes, their spines cracked and faded, their pages brittle with age. Every surface seemed to hold a story, a fragment of Isolde's enigmatic life. The reading of the will took place in a dimly lit drawing room, the heavy velvet curtains drawn against the outside world. Mr. Alastair Blackwood, a stoic man with a neatly trimmed grey beard and eyes that seemed to have seen too much, presided over the proceedings, his voice a low, resonant drone. Present were a handful of Isolde's distant relatives, a collection of stern-faced individuals with an air of entitled expectation, their expressions ranging from thinly veiled impatience to outright avarice. They eyed Alaric with a mixture of suspicion and thinly veiled resentment. He was the outsider, the upstart, the tech billionaire who had mysteriously appeared to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs, a vulture circling their inheritance. The will, read in Blackwood's dry, monotonous voice, was a document of bewildering complexity, filled with legal jargon and archaic phrasing. Isolde Blackwood, it revealed, had indeed amassed a staggering fortune, not from old money or family inheritance, but from shrewd, almost prescient investments in obscure biotech firms decades ago. Her portfolio, managed by a private, unlisted trust, the Obsidian Trust, was worth over $500 million. A collective murmur rippled through the room. The relatives shifted restlessly, their eyes widening with each mention of a new sum, their initial impatience replaced by greedy anticipation. Then came the bombshell, delivered with a quiet, devastating impact. While various smaller bequests were made to charities like the Blackwood Creek Animal Sanctuary and distant cousins, the bulk of the estate, the entire $500 million, along with Ravenscroft Estate and its contents, was bequeathed to Alaric Vance. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a stunned silence. Then, the relatives erupted in angry whispers, their faces contorted with disbelief and outrage, their carefully constructed composure shattering. "This is preposterous," one woman, Mrs. Eleanor Finch, shrieked, her voice shrill, her face turning a mottled red. "Alaric Vance? Who is he?" "A distant, forgotten relative. This must be a mistake. A trick." Alaric felt a surge of something akin to morbid amusement, a dark satisfaction at their outrage. He had expected a trinket, perhaps a small sum, a token gesture. Not $500 million from a woman he barely knew, a woman who seemed to have lived a life of quiet obscurity. The sheer absurdity of it was almost comical, a cosmic joke played at his expense, or perhaps, theirs. Blackwood, unfazed by the outburst, held up a hand for silence, his gaze unwavering. "The will is ironclad. Miss Blackwood was of sound mind. And there are," Conditions. Conditions. Alaric's amusement evaporated, replaced by a familiar prickle of suspicion. Wealth, he knew, rarely came without strings. He had built his empire on understanding the hidden costs, the unspoken clauses. The conditions were indeed peculiar, almost deliberately vexing. Alaric was required to reside at Ravenscroft Estate for at least 6 months of the year for the first 5 years, a direct affront to his meticulously planned, globe-trotting lifestyle. He was forbidden from selling the manor or its contents for 10 years, effectively tying him to this decaying relic. And most baffling of all, he was tasked with unraveling the tapestry of truth woven by the shadows of the past, a cryptic phrase that made the relatives snort with derision, convinced Isolde had finally lost her mind. "What does that even mean?" a portly man, Mr. Silas Croft, demanded, his voice laced with contempt. "Some kind of eccentric riddle? A scavenger hunt for a madwoman's delusions?" Blackwood merely adjusted his spectacles, his expression unreadable. Miss Blackwood was a woman of unique interests. Her instructions are clear. "Mr. Vance, you are also required to engage the services of a private investigator, specifically one she named, Caleb Finch." Alaric frowned. Caleb Finch. Another unknown variable in this increasingly bizarre equation, another thread in Isolde's intricate web. He felt a growing sense of being manipulated, a puppet on a string pulled by a dead hand. After the reading, as the disgruntled relatives stormed out, their angry whispers echoing in the grand hallway, Alaric remained, a strange mix of bewilderment and intrigue swirling within him. Seraphina, ever pragmatic, was already making calls, her phone pressed to her ear, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This is unprecedented, Alaric," she said, her voice low. "My contacts at Zenith Financial Group are already buzzing. $500 million, out of nowhere. And these conditions. It's almost like she's setting you a test. A very expensive, very inconvenient test. Or a trap," Alaric muttered, his gaze sweeping across the dusty, silent room, his eyes narrowing. The metallic tang in the air seemed stronger now, almost like the faint scent of old blood, or something even more sinister. He felt a cold premonition, a sense that this inheritance was far more than it seemed. He decided to explore the manor. He found Isolde's study, a room even more cluttered than the others, a testament to a life spent in obsessive pursuit. Books on toxicology, corporate law, historical scandals, and obscure medical journals filled the shelves, crammed haphazardly, some spilling onto the floor. A large, antique desk, made of dark, heavy oak, was covered in meticulously organized files, handwritten notes, and faded photographs. One photograph, in particular, caught his eye, a black-and-white image of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with a haunted look in her eyes, a shadow of sorrow etched on her face. Behind her, a faded sign read, "Solara Pharmaceuticals." As he explored further, the silver key from the locket felt heavy in his palm. He ran his fingers along the ornate carvings on the walls, the dusty bookshelves. In a forgotten alcove behind a tapestry depicting a hunting scene, his fingers brushed against a subtle seam in the wooden paneling. A faint click echoed in the silence. A hidden compartment. With a surge of anticipation, he inserted the tiny silver key. It fit perfectly. The panel swung inward, revealing a small, dark recess. Inside, a single, leather-bound ledger, distinct from Isolde's other journals, lay nestled. Its cover was embossed with a stylized symbol, a serpent entwined around a caduceus, but with the serpent's head replaced by a skull. A shiver ran down his spine. This was no ordinary family heirloom. The ledger was filled with cryptic entries, dates, and names, some familiar from Isolde's other notes, others completely unknown. It was written in a complex code, a mix of medical terminology and what appeared to be a personal cipher. This was Isolde's true work, her most guarded secret. Later that evening, as Alaric and Seraphina discussed the day's events, a sharp rap echoed through the grand entrance hall. It was Mr. Silas Croft, the portly relative from the will reading, accompanied by two burly men in ill-fitting suits. Croft's face was red with indignation, his eyes narrowed. "Vance. We know you're up to something. My cousin Isolde was a fragile old woman. You've manipulated her. We demand access to the estate. We'll find the proof." Alaric, his voice calm but laced with steel, met Croft's gaze. "Mr. Croft, the will has been upheld. This is private property. I suggest you leave before I call the local authorities." The burly men shifted uneasily under Alaric's unwavering stare. Croft, seeing the futility of his bluster, finally retreated, but not before muttering a veiled threat, "This isn't over, Vance." Not by a long shot. The encounter solidified Alaric's growing suspicion. The inheritance was a target, and he was now in the crosshairs. The next morning, Alaric received a series of anonymous, untraceable text messages. Each message contained a single, chilling photograph, a close-up of his penthouse window, a shot of Serafina leaving Ravenscroft Estate, and a blurred image of Kalen's lab building in Cleveland. The final message read, "Some secrets are best left buried. Or they bury you." This was no longer just about money or a legal challenge, it was a direct threat, a violation of his carefully constructed security. The game had just turned deadly. He immediately contacted Commander Eva Rostova, his head of security, to implement heightened surveillance and protective measures for himself, Serafina, and, most importantly, Kalen. As Alaric delved deeper into the cryptic ledger, he discovered a series of coordinates hidden within the cipher. They pointed not to a location, but to a specific frequency on an old, decommissioned shortwave radio. He managed to locate such a radio in Isolde's attic, dusty and long unused. With a mix of trepidation and excitement, he tuned it to the specified frequency. Static filled the air, then a faint, crackling voice. It was a recording, Isolde's voice, older and weaker, but unmistakably hers. "If you are hearing this, Alaric, it means you have chosen to see. They will come for you. They came for Ilara. But the truth is a seed. Once planted, it will grow. Look for the Nightshade Protocol. It is their true legacy. And find the Orphanage of Whispers. The children remember." The recording faded into static. Nightshade Protocol. Orphanage of Whispers. The mystery deepened, hinting at a far more sinister plot than he had initially imagined. What desperate measures will OmniHealth Solutions take to silence Alaric and his team? And how will Alaric, Kalen, and their allies finally bring the truth to light? If you're on the edge of your seat, like this story, subscribe for immediate updates, and share your predictions in the comments. The first few weeks at Ravenscroft Estate were a blur of legalities, logistical nightmares, and a growing sense of profound unease. Alaric, accustomed to the hyper-efficient ecosystem of Lumina Dynamics, found himself navigating a world of probate courts, estate lawyers, and the endless, dusty contents of Isolde's life. Every antique, every book, every faded photograph seemed to hum with unspoken secrets. Serafina Croft, his chief of staff, proved invaluable, her sharp mind cutting through bureaucratic red tape and fielding incessant calls from the media, who had caught wind of the tech billionaire's strange inheritance. The Chronicle of Commerce wants an exclusive, Serafina reported one morning, sipping a lukewarm coffee in the manor's cavernous, unheated kitchen, its grand fireplace cold and empty. An Apex Business Review is speculating on your eccentric new hobby, and the potential impact on Lumina Dynamics stock. Alaric merely grunted, sifting through a box of old medical records he'd found in Isolde's study, his fingers brushing against brittle paper. The metallic tang, he realized, was the faint, lingering scent of formaldehyde and old chemicals, a scent that evoked images of laboratories and sterile environments. It was unsettling, a constant reminder of the dark undercurrents beneath the manor's genteel facade. His first priority was finding Caleb Finch. A quick search through his extensive network, usually capable of locating anyone, yielded little. Finch wasn't listed in any prominent PI directories, nor did he have a digital footprint. He was a ghost, a name whispered in the shadows. It wasn't until Serafina, using her more discreet contacts within the shadowy world of private intelligence, found an obscure listing for Finch and Associates in a forgotten, gritty corner of Brooklyn, New York, tucked above a noisy, perpetually bustling deli. Caleb Finch was everything Alaric wasn't: rumpled, cynical, and seemingly perpetually on the verge of retirement, his clothes a permanent state of disarray. He met Alaric in a cluttered office above a noisy deli, the air thick with the smell of pastrami, stale coffee, and regret, a stark contrast to Alaric's pristine Manhattan office. Finch, a man in his late 60s with weary eyes that missed nothing, eyes that seemed to have seen every dark corner of human nature, listened patiently, almost impassively, as Alaric explained the bizarre inheritance and Isolde's cryptic instructions. Isolde Blackwood, Finch mused, taking a slow drag from a perpetually unlit cigar, its unburnt tip a symbol of his own unfulfilled desires. Knew her. Knew her family. Stubborn as hell, that one. And sharp. Always had a nose for trouble, especially the kind that powerful people try to bury. What kind of trouble? Alaric pressed, a flicker of hope igniting within him, a desperate need for answers. Finch leaned back, his ancient wooden chair creaking in protest, the springs groaning under his weight. Pharmaceuticals. Specifically, Solara Pharmaceuticals. Her family owned it, back in the day. Small-time outfit, focused on niche remedies. Then, about 50 years ago, they developed a new sedative. Called it Tranquilex. Marketed as a miracle cure for anxiety, a panacea for the modern age. It made a big splash, promised a new era of calm. Then, it all went quiet. Too quiet. Alaric felt a sharp jolt, a cold dread seizing his chest. Tranquilex. The name resonated with a faint, unsettling echo from his childhood, a name whispered in hushed tones, associated with vague, unpleasant memories. He remembered a period when his mother, desperate for a solution to their endless worries, had briefly tried a new miracle medication. What happened? Alaric asked, his voice barely a whisper, a premonition of horror forming in his mind. Side effects, Finch said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, as if relaying a common tragedy. Nasty ones. Neurological damage, severe depression, debilitating tremors, even fatalities in some cases. It wasn't a cure, it was a poison. It was a disaster, a public health catastrophe. Solara Pharmaceuticals went bankrupt, their reputation in tatters. The patent, the research, everything was bought up by a bigger fish. Omni Health Solutions. Omni Health Solutions. The name hit Alaric like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. It was a multinational pharmaceutical giant, a behemoth of the industry, notorious for its aggressive lobbying, its impenetrable legal fortress, and its relentless pursuit of profit above all else. Alaric had even considered investing in their AI division years ago, before his focus shifted entirely to Lumina Dynamics, seeing them as a stable, if ethically questionable, investment. The irony was bitter. My brother, Kalen, Alaric began, his voice tight, a tremor in his hand. He suffered from a rare neurological condition as a child. The doctors never pinpointed the cause. We lived in Ashfall, Ohio. There was a period when a lot of kids in our neighborhood were sick with similar symptoms. Persistent headaches, tremors, cognitive issues. Finch's weary eyes sharpened, a flicker of intense focus replacing their usual detached cynicism. Ashfall, Ohio, you say? Interesting. Solara Pharmaceuticals ran clinical trials in several underserved communities, as they called them. Places where people were desperate, where oversight was minimal. Ashfall was one of them. They promised free medication, free healthcare, a chance at a better life. A lot of desperate people signed up, hoping for a miracle. The pieces began to click into place, forming a horrifying mosaic, a picture of corporate malfeasance and human suffering. Isolde Blackwood hadn't just been an eccentric recluse. She had been a woman on a lifelong crusade, meticulously gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, the right person, to expose a truth buried for half a century. And that person, inexplicably, was Alaric Vance, the very man who had tried to forget his past. The Tapestry of Truth was the elaborate, decades-long cover-up of Tranquillix's devastating effects. The shadows of the past were the countless victims, their lives irrevocably altered, like his own brother. The metallic tang in Ravenscroft estate wasn't just old chemicals, it was the lingering scent of injustice, of buried secrets, of lives sacrificed for profit. Alaric felt a cold dread settle in his stomach, quickly followed by a surge of righteous fury he hadn't felt in decades, a primal anger that burned hotter than any ambition. His past, which he had so desperately tried to outrun, had finally caught up to him, delivered by the hand of a dead woman. The negative contrasts of his impoverished childhood, the illness that had plagued Caelan, the struggles of Ashfall, they were all intertwined with this unexpected inheritance, a dark thread woven into the fabric of his life. He tried to contact Caelan again, desperate to share what he'd found. Caelan, however, remained unreachable, his phone going straight to voicemail, his email unanswered. Alaric knew his brother's stubbornness, his deep-seated resentment, his refusal to engage. But this wasn't just about their past anymore, it was about justice. The psychological toll on Alaric intensified. He found himself questioning everything, the ethics of his own company, the relentless pursuit of profit, the very foundations of the system he had so successfully navigated. The euphoria of the initial inheritance had long since evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of responsibility and a chilling awareness of the darkness lurking beneath the polished surface of corporate America, a darkness he had once been complicit in ignoring. He started seeing threats everywhere. Was the anonymous message a genuine tip, or a trap, a lure into a deeper snare? Were his own employees at Lumina Dynamics compromised, their loyalty bought? He installed advanced security systems at Ravenscroft Estate, turning the decaying mansion into a fortress, a bastion against unseen enemies. He hired a new, highly discreet security detail, composed of former Special Forces operatives from Blackwater Security, their presence a constant, reassuring shadow. His life, once predictable in its opulence, had become a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, a battle for survival. One evening, as he drove back to Ravenscroft Estate from a clandestine meeting with Finch, his luxury sedan, a Zenith Zephyr, weaving through the quiet Blackwood Creek streets, a black SUV, its windows tinted, began to follow him, its movements precise and menacing. Alaric, instinctively, took evasive maneuvers, his adrenaline surging, a sensation he hadn't felt since the early, desperate days of Lumina Dynamics, when every decision was a gamble. The SUV persisted, its headlights glaring in his rearview mirror, a predator stalking its prey. He pushed the Zenith Zephyr to its limits, taking sharp turns, speeding down narrow country lanes. He finally lost them in a maze of back roads, his heart pounding against his ribs, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was dangerous. Omni Health Solutions was watching. And they were willing to do anything to protect their secrets. He realized he needed to bring Caelan into the fold, not just for emotional support, but because Caelan, as a medical researcher, could provide invaluable scientific insight into the old data, lending credibility to their claims. He flew to Cleveland, unannounced, and appeared at Caelan's university lab, the Biomedical Research Center, startling his brother amidst his experiments. Caelan, dressed in a lab coat, looked up from his microscope, his face a mask of surprise and irritation, his initial reaction one of annoyance. "Alaric? What are you doing here?" "I'm busy. We need to talk. Now. It's about Tranquillix. And Project Chimera. It's about us." Alaric laid out the evidence: Isolde's journals, Finch's findings, the anonymous tip, the recent chase, the chilling details of the cover-up. He showed Calen the old photographs, the names of the victims, the chilling details of the unethical trials, the scientific papers detailing the neurological damage. He watched as Calen's initial skepticism slowly gave way to a dawning horror, his face paling as he absorbed the grim truth. This is impossible," Calen whispered, his hands trembling as he held a faded document detailing the symptoms of Tranquilix. The symptoms matched his own childhood illness with chilling accuracy, a horrifying confirmation of his worst fears. "It can't be. It's not impossible, Calen. It's real. And I think it's why Isolde left me everything. She wanted someone with the resources, someone with the drive, to expose them. Someone who had a personal stake. Someone like us." Calen looked at Alaric, a complex mix of emotions in his eyes. Anger, pain, and a flicker of something Alaric hadn't seen in decades, a shared purpose, a rekindled connection. "So, what do we do?" "We fight," Alaric said, his voice hard, resolute. "We expose them. For Isolde. For the victims. For us. For every child like you who suffered." The conversation with Calen was a turning point. The initial shock gave way to a cold, scientific resolve in Calen's eyes. He plunged into Isolde's archives, his medical expertise proving invaluable in decoding the complex scientific notations in the ledger and cross-referencing them with modern research. He discovered a hidden sequence of genetic markers, a signature left by Project Chimera's experimental treatments, a signature that tragically matched his own. This was the irrefutable scientific proof they needed. Meanwhile, Finch, following a lead from the cryptic ledger, tracked down a former low-level technician from Solara Pharmaceuticals, a man named Silas Thorne, no relation to Cassian Thorne, who had witnessed the early, unethical trials of Project Chimera. Silas, living a quiet, fearful life under an assumed identity in a small town in Vermont, was initially terrified to speak. But Finch, leveraging his empathy and promising comprehensive protection, managed to convince him. Silas provided a chilling first-hand account of the trials, detailing the coercion of vulnerable families and the deliberate falsification of data. He even had a hidden cache of old, encrypted digital files, a backup he'd made before Solara's collapse, containing raw, unredacted patient data and internal communications. The discovery of Silas's data cache was a game-changer. Alaric immediately deployed Lumina Dynamics' top cybersecurity experts to decrypt the files. The process was arduous, fraught with the risk of detection by OmniHealth Solutions, but after days of relentless work, the data was unlocked. It contained irrefutable evidence, direct orders from OmniHealth Solutions executives to suppress negative research findings, detailed plans for the acquisition of Solara Pharmaceuticals specifically to bury Project Chimera, and chillingly, a list of target communities for the trials, with Ashfall, Ohio, prominently featured. The names of the children, their symptoms, their long-term prognosis, it was all there. Alaric saw Calen's name, and his own family's address, listed among the trial participants. A cold fury, deeper than any he had ever known, settled in his heart. This wasn't just a case, it was a personal vendetta. The psychological toll on Alaric deepened. He found himself haunted by the faces of the children in the decrypted files, their innocent smiles juxtaposed with the clinical descriptions of their deteriorating health. His sleep was almost non-existent, replaced by restless pacing through the silent halls of Ravenscroft Estate, the weight of the truth a crushing burden. He pushed himself relentlessly, driven by a fierce need for justice, but the isolation grew more profound. He was fighting a war on multiple fronts. Against a corporate giant, against his own past, and against the creeping paranoia that every shadow held a threat. One night, a sophisticated drone, equipped with surveillance technology, was detected hovering near Ravenscroft Estate. Alaric's security team, led by a former Blackwater operative named Commander Eva Rostova, immediately deployed countermeasures, jamming its signals and forcing it down in a nearby field. Upon inspection, they found it was a high-tech model, far beyond the capabilities of a casual stalker, bearing subtle markings that pointed to a subsidiary of Omni Health Solutions. The message was clear: they were escalating. They were no longer just watching, they were actively probing his defenses. The pressure from Lumina Dynamics board members intensified. Gideon Sterling called an emergency meeting, his voice tight with barely contained panic. "Alaric, our stock has fallen by 25% this month. The market is reacting to the rumors, to the public attacks. We have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders. You need to issue a statement, distance yourself from this vendetta." Alaric met his gaze, his own eyes colder than ever. "Gideon, this isn't a vendetta. This is the truth. And the truth will set us free, even if it costs us everything in the short term. I will not back down. If you want to sell your shares, do it. But I will not compromise the integrity of Lumina Dynamics, or myself, for profit." His defiance was absolute. He knew he was risking his empire, but the cost of inaction, of silence, was far greater. With the scientific proof from Kalen, the first-hand testimony and data from Silas, and the unwavering support of Finch and Serafina, Alaric felt a surge of grim determination. They had enough. Now, it was time to strike. What desperate measures will Omni Health Solutions take to silence Alaric and his team? And how will Alaric, Kalen, and their allies finally bring the truth to light? If you're on the edge of your seat, like this story, subscribe for immediate updates, and share your predictions in the comments. The alliance between Alaric and Kalen, forged in the crucible of their shared past and a common enemy, was an uneasy but undeniably powerful one. Kalen, with his meticulous scientific mind, became invaluable in deciphering the complex medical jargon in Isolde's archives and identifying the specific neurological pathways affected by Tranquilix and the Project Chimera experiments. He confirmed Alaric's darkest suspicions. The symptoms he and other children in Ashfall experienced were consistent with the documented side effects and experimental treatments, a damning indictment of Omni Health Solutions. "This isn't just negligence, Alaric," Kalen stated one evening, surrounded by medical texts and lab reports in Ravenscroft Estate's library, his face grim. "This was deliberate. They knew the risks. They just didn't care. They prioritized profit over human lives." Alaric, with Serafina's strategic brilliance and Finch's investigative tenacity, began to formulate a multi-pronged attack against Omni Health Solutions. They couldn't just leak the information. Omni Health Solutions' legal team, led by the formidable Citadel Legal Group, would bury them in lawsuits, discredit them, and silence them. They needed irrefutable proof, meticulously documented and presented in a way that would force public and regulatory attention, leaving no room for doubt or denial. Their plan involved three key elements, each carefully orchestrated: the scientific bomb. Kalen would prepare a comprehensive scientific paper, meticulously detailing the link between Tranquilix/Project Chimera and the long-term neurological damage, using Isolde's data, his own extensive research, and newly acquired evidence from Silas. This paper would be submitted to a prestigious, peer-reviewed medical journal, the Arcane Medical Review, ensuring its scientific validity and widespread dissemination within the medical community. The whistleblower. Alaric's data team, after weeks of relentless searching, finally located Dr. Elara Thorne. She hadn't vanished into thin air, she had been living under an assumed identity, Eleanor Vance, a deliberate nod to Serafina's own name, a subtle irony, in a remote, secluded cabin in the redwood forests of Oregon, her life shattered by fear and guilt, haunted by the past. Alaric, through Finch, cautiously approached her, a delicate dance of trust-building. It took weeks of delicate negotiation, promises of absolute protection, financial security, and the undeniable moral weight of Isolde Blackwood's legacy, but Elara, now a frail woman in her 70s, her eyes still holding a spark of defiance, finally agreed to come forward. She held the missing pieces of the puzzle, internal memos, signed orders, and chilling audio recordings that directly implicated OmniHealth Solutions senior executives in the decades-long cover-up. The media blitz. Once the scientific paper was accepted and Alara Thorne was ready to speak, Alaric would orchestrate a massive media campaign, leveraging his influence and resources to ensure the story reached every corner of the globe. He contacted a trusted investigative journalist at the Metropolitan Beacon, a woman named Clara Davies, known for her fearless reporting on corporate malfeasance and her unwavering commitment to truth. He provided her with a carefully curated dossier of evidence, enough to pique her interest without revealing their full hand. The stakes were astronomically high. OmniHealth Solutions was a titan, its tentacles reaching into government, research institutions, and media outlets, its power seemingly unassailable. Alaric knew they would fight back with every weapon at their disposal, no holds barred. He braced for corporate espionage, smear campaigns, legal intimidation, and perhaps even more direct, physical threats. The threats began almost immediately, a chilling confirmation of their fears. Lumina Dynamics faced a sudden, aggressive cyber attack, a sophisticated digital assault attempting to cripple its systems, steal proprietary data, and disrupt its operations. Alaric's elite security team, anticipating such a move, managed to repel the attack, tracing its origins to a shadowy network of offshore servers, but it was a clear, unambiguous message: OmniHealth Solutions knew he was coming, and they were playing dirty. Then came the personal attacks, insidious and designed to undermine his credibility. Anonymous articles appeared online, on obscure blogs and social media forums, resurrecting old, unflattering stories about Alaric's ruthless business practices, distorting facts, and painting him as an unhinged eccentric obsessed with a dead woman's delusion. His past, the very negative contrasts he had tried to outrun, was being weaponized against him, twisted into a narrative of instability and vengeance. He saw headlines like, "Tech Titan Vance, from rags to riches to reckless vendetta," and "Lumina Dynamics CEO's bizarre obsession threatens billions." His carefully constructed public image began to crack under the relentless assault. His board members, already nervous, demanded an emergency meeting, their faces etched with worry. Gideon Sterling, his face grim, laid it bare. "Alaric, this is impacting Lumina Dynamics. Our stock is taking a hit, plummeting by nearly 15% in a week. Investors are spooked. Our reputation is being dragged through the mud. You need to drop this Blackwood crusade. It's too costly." "This isn't a crusade, Gideon," Alaric said, his voice cold, unwavering, his eyes fixed on the distant, glittering skyline of Manhattan, a world he was willing to risk. "This is justice. And it's going to happen, with or without your support. I will not compromise on this." He knew he was risking everything: his company, his reputation, his vast fortune, the empire he had painstakingly built. But the thought of the children in Ashfall, of Kaylan's suffering, of Isolde Blackwood's lifelong fight for truth, fueled him, burning away any hesitation. The unexpected inheritance had not only given him a purpose, it had stripped away the layers of cynicism and self-interest that had defined his life, revealing a core of something stronger, something more profound. The day of reckoning arrived, a culmination of decades of hidden secrets and relentless pursuit. Kaylan's paper, titled "The Long Shadow of Tranquilix, a retrospective analysis of neurotoxic effects and corporate suppression," was published in the prestigious Arcane Medical Review. Its findings were damning, meticulously linking the drug to widespread, long-term health issues, leaving no room for scientific debate. Simultaneously, the Metropolitan Beacon ran a front-page exposé, "Project Chimera, OmniHealth Solutions' Decades-Long Deception Unveiled." The article featured Alara Thorne's powerful testimony, backed by her trove of internal documents and chilling audio recordings. It detailed the horrific human trials, the deliberate cover-up, and the subsequent acquisition by OmniHealth Solutions not to rectify, but to bury the truth and potentially exploit the research for their own nefarious ends. The public outcry was immediate and immense, a tidal wave of outrage. News channels ran continuous coverage, their headlines screaming about corporate greed and human suffering. Social media exploded with outrage, hashtags like #JusticeForTranquilix trending globally. Regulatory bodies, shamed into action by the overwhelming evidence and public pressure, launched sweeping investigations. Class action lawsuits, filed by a coalition of victims' families and spearheaded by a newly formed legal advocacy group, the Sentinel Collective, began to pile up against OmniHealth Solutions, threatening to bankrupt the corporate giant. The CEO of OmniHealth Solutions, a stoic, unyielding man named Orion Blackwood, no relation to Isolde, but the name felt fittingly cold and powerful, appeared on national television, attempting to deflect blame, citing legacy issues and isolated incidents from a previous era. But Alara Thorne's testimony, coupled with Kalen's irrefutable scientific evidence, was too overwhelming, too meticulously documented. He stammered, his carefully constructed facade cracking under the relentless questioning. The climax came in a dramatic congressional hearing, televised live, captivating the nation. Alaric, Kalen, and Alara Thorne testified, facing a panel of skeptical but ultimately swayed politicians, their initial cynicism replaced by shock and anger. Alaric, usually reserved and analytical, spoke with a raw passion, detailing Isolde's relentless pursuit of justice, the suffering of his own family, and the ethical responsibility of corporations to their consumers. Kalen presented the scientific data with quiet authority, his voice clear and unwavering as he laid bare the medical facts. Alara Thorne, frail but resolute, recounted the chilling details of Project Chimera, her voice unwavering, her eyes burning with a lifetime of suppressed truth. Orion Blackwood, under intense, relentless questioning from the Congressional Committee, crumbled. The evidence was too overwhelming. The public pressure too great. His carefully constructed empire began to collapse around him. Just as the hearing concluded, a final, desperate act of sabotage occurred. A sudden, massive power surge hit the main servers of Lumina Dynamics, threatening to wipe out years of data and cripple the company. It was a targeted, sophisticated attack, clearly designed to retaliate and silence Alaric. However, Alaric's foresight in bolstering Lumina Dynamics cybersecurity, specifically for this confrontation, paid off. Commander Eva Rostova and her team, working remotely from a secure undisclosed location, managed to divert the attack, containing the damage and tracing its origin to a shell corporation linked directly to OmniHealth Solutions' Black Ops division. The attempt failed, but it served as a stark reminder of the lengths to which corporate power would go to protect its secrets. The revelation of OmniHealth Solutions' decades-long deception sent shockwaves through the global pharmaceutical industry. Beyond the immediate legal and financial repercussions, it sparked a worldwide debate on corporate ethics, patient safety, and the accountability of powerful corporations. Governments began reviewing existing regulations, pushing for stricter oversight and harsher penalties for medical negligence and unethical human trials. The story of Isolde Blackwood, the reclusive woman who meticulously documented the truth, became a symbol of quiet resilience against overwhelming power. Do you think OmniHealth Solutions' final desperate attack was a sign of their true desperation? And what impact do you think this scandal will have on the future of corporate accountability? If you're inspired by this turn of events, like this story, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring narratives, and share your thoughts on corporate ethics in the comments. The aftermath of the OmniHealth Solutions scandal was a maelstrom of corporate collapse and legal reckoning. The company's stock plummeted, its value evaporating overnight. Its senior executives faced criminal charges, their careers and reputations in ruins. Regulatory fines reached unprecedented levels, crippling the once mighty pharmaceutical giant. Class action lawsuits, led by a newly invigorated legal team working with Alaric and the Sentinel Collective, promised billions in reparations to the victims and their families, a small measure of justice for decades of suffering. It was a victory, hard-won and deeply satisfying, but tinged with the sadness of what had been lost. Alaric Vance, the ruthless tech titan, was now seen in a new light. He was no longer just a billionaire, he was a corporate crusader, a man who had risked everything, his fortune, his company, his reputation, for justice. The media, which had initially questioned his motives and painted him as an eccentric, now lauded him as a hero, a champion of the people. But Alaric felt no triumph, only a quiet sense of exhaustion and a profound, irreversible shift in his perspective, a transformation from within. The unexpected inheritance from Isolde Blackwood had indeed changed his life, not always for the better in the conventional sense of increased comfort or power, but certainly for the deeper, more meaningful. It had forced him to confront the dark underbelly of the world he inhabited, the moral compromises made in the relentless pursuit of power and profit, the human cost of unchecked ambition. More importantly, it had forced him to confront his own past, the wounds he had left unhealed, the relationships he had neglected, the brother he had abandoned. His relationship with Kaylin, once a chasm of resentment and unspoken pain, began to mend, slowly, tentatively, like a shattered vase being pieced back together. The shared battle against OmniHealth Solutions had forged a new, unbreakable bond between them, a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Kaylin, now a recognized expert in neurotoxicology, dedicated his research to developing treatments for the long-term effects of Tranquilix and Project Chimera, his work driven by a personal mission. Alaric provided substantial funding for Kaylin's lab, establishing the Vance Kaylin Institute in Cleveland, focused on environmental and corporate-induced illnesses, a testament to their newfound partnership. "You know," Kaylin said one day, a rare, soft smile on his face, as they walked through the newly renovated Ravenscroft estate, which Alaric had decided to preserve and convert into a research archive and a small museum dedicated to Isolde Blackwood's work, "Mom and Dad would have been proud of both of us. They always wanted us to stick together." Alaric nodded, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips, a warmth spreading through his chest. "Isolde would be too. She gave us this chance." The manor, once a symbol of decay and hidden secrets, now hummed with a new purpose, a vibrant center of research and truth. Its library, once filled with Isolde's meticulous research, now housed a vast collection of documents related to corporate malfeasance and a growing archive of victim testimonies, a beacon for future investigations. It became a quiet but powerful hub for investigative journalists, legal scholars, and medical researchers, all seeking to expose injustice. Alaric didn't abandon Lumina Dynamics. Instead, he steered it towards a new ethical compass, a commitment to social responsibility. He established a new division within the company, Lumina Integrity, dedicated to using AI and data analytics to identify and expose corporate misconduct, environmental crimes, and human rights abuses, leveraging technology for good. He leveraged his wealth and influence to advocate for stricter regulations, greater corporate transparency, and stronger protections for whistleblowers, becoming a powerful voice for change in Washington. He became a vocal proponent of responsible wealth management, not just as a financial strategy, but as a moral imperative, a duty to society. He also established the Isolde Blackwood Foundation, funded by a significant portion of the inherited wealth and a matching contribution from his own vast fortune. The foundation provided legal aid, medical support, and financial assistance to victims of corporate negligence, particularly in underserved communities like Ashfall. He visited Ashfall more frequently now, not as an escapee, but as someone trying to give back, to heal the scars of his past, to rebuild what had been lost. The town, though still struggling, saw a glimmer of hope, a renewed sense of possibility. New clinics were established, environmental cleanup initiatives began, and educational programs were launched, all funded by the foundation, slowly but surely revitalizing the community. The legacy of Isolde Blackwood, a reclusive woman driven by a fierce, unyielding sense of justice, had created a ripple effect that impacted generations. Her unexpected inheritance, initially a source of bewilderment and then immense problems for Alaric, had ultimately become the catalyst for his own profound transformation. It had forced him to look beyond the numbers, beyond the bottom line, and to confront the true meaning of wealth and responsibility, a lesson far more valuable than any fortune. Alaric Vance still lived in his Manhattan penthouse part of the year, still ran Lumina Dynamics, still commanded billions. But the emptiness was gone. The gilded cage had opened, and he had stepped out, a changed man. He had found a purpose beyond accumulation, a connection to humanity he had long suppressed, a sense of belonging he had never known. The unexpected inheritance had not just changed his life, it had given him a new one, richer in meaning than any fortune could buy. He had inherited not just money, but a legacy, and in doing so, he had begun to build his own, one founded on integrity and justice. He often reflected on the strange twist of fate that led him to this path, a path he would never have chosen, yet one that ultimately defined him. The metallic tang, once a scent of dread, now lingered as a reminder of the battle won, a scent of hard-earned victory and a future built on truth. Thank you for immersing yourself in Unexpected Inheritances, the Serpent's Caducus. We hope this journey of mystery, justice, and transformation has resonated with you. If you've been moved by Alaric's story and the fight for truth, please consider joining our community. Subscribe to our channel for more captivating narratives that challenge the status quo. Like this video to show your support for stories that matter. Comment below with your thoughts on legacy and responsibility. What kind of impact do you hope to leave? And don't forget to share this powerful tale with friends and family who appreciate a story of unexpected twists and enduring purpose. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful content to life.